And this time around, the banks are writing this stuff off fast and getting it off their books. So it's not playing really out in public, but the fact that there is so much, I mean, the delinquency rates are so high would just indicate the momentum, and those numbers sound like they've grown versus fallen further. So we've been seeing the numbers continuing to inch down month over month over month, and now we've been seeing sporadic inches up, and then so it's been flat to up versus down, 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 down.
And my greatest fear is that based on everything that they're doing for the market, right, which is, we turned REOs not into inventory, we turned them into rental properties as investments for Wall Street. That's starting to show. Actually, Housing Wire just released an article. I was going to discuss it with you today. It costs more to own a home in every single state in the United States than rent. That doesn't bode well for real estate agents. And they broke it down by median price, state to state. It's actual. We've turned into a rental-based real estate, business. And I'm wondering how much this affects the mindset, because there was a report last week, and I have to keep looking at reports of my age group or higher. I don't know how they even call the age groups anymore, but people are staying in their houses longer, right? They're aware of all this data that's available on the internet, and there are fears based on the market or what happened previously. So people are staying in their houses longer. And I'm wondering what impact that has on the mindset of the average agent.
Well, listen, first of all, I'm surprised that the number of real estate agents continues to grow.
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's the number I don't understand.
Right. So I don't know why that's happening, and but we do know that we do know that most real estate agents aren't productive. So we were doing the analysis of our marketplaces results of all teams and agents and companies for 2018. And what we were trying to confirm was that we were the number one sales team in our county, which I'm, happy to announce that we were. But that's not the point. The point is when you're looking at the data, and you go down 50% of the agents, 50%, it's more than that. I didn't bother to count it. I just had 0 transactions for the year. So, so there's a major difference. And so the only way that you can have 0 transactions in a year is really making no effort to do any transactions. So, I'm not sure what the correlation between the number of agents are versus the number of transactions, but it's definitely a shift. And I think some people are just giving up. And some of those agents have done transactions in the past and just decided they need to go get a real job. And by the way, I know several really great loan officers who have taken jobs other places, so they can support their families, and have given up on trying to make a full-time living. So they're doing mortgage lending, part-time. And I know that's true in real estate, that people are just looking for breadcrumbs.
Right. And that's the thing I keep seeing. And really, and I recommend this to everybody who's watching or listening. Look, we're in the business of looking for a unique data niche and working those for listings. I'm not trying to bum you out about the market. I mean, if you're on the East Coast like Ezio, you're happy, right? You're happy that the market was so delayed to get to where you are, that New York and the East Coast are taking it just now. I mean, that makes it sort of a winning combination out on that coast. Places like Florida still haven't recovered. I mean, there are just certain markets that will never quite come all the way back, David, but I'm fascinated with literally the lack of information about this real estate market. And as a guy who does marketing and teaches marketing and shows people how to do marketing, from a business level all the way up to real estate, like here, what I find shocking is the response within the real estate community that makes money supporting real estate agents, right? So, and Diana was telling me this the other day, and I was trying not to physically roll my eyes into the back of my head. She goes, there's a hard push right now on the basics, right? Going back to door knocking, going back to mailers, and really pushing cold calls. That's what, you know, they're pushing. And it's just mind boggling to me that we've reached a point where, like you said, chasing the breadcrumbs for the average agent. The other 80%, forget the 20%. I can't even, you're a top 1%. That it's not even like discussing Diana. It's not, most of the people on this call, I'm not discussing you. I'm talking about the 3 to 5 listings per year that sort of made you ink by as this is a pretty good job kind of group that struggle every single day to come by the next deal. And I'm like you, I don't understand how the numbers continue to go up in real estate agents. I don't know, with the constant barrage of new companies coming online and out slandering MLS systems and the National Association of Realtors. It's I'm watching this as a neutral guy who understands marketing, watching all this happen, going, I don't even know how this is like, I don't get it. I don't know how it got so far away from everything. And it's all because of one cataclysmic event in 2007, 8, 9 that has caused a dramatic shift in real estate and distrust within real estate. And it's interesting. That's just where I'm at. And I just keep wondering, if the Fed raises the rate a little bit too high, what's that going to do to the market? Can we really handle another slowdown? Like, what is the single event in your mind, David, that would have to occur that would cause some kind of weird meltdown? Like, would the media have to go into full recession talk? Would it, where people just shut down and there was no longer real estate transactions? What do you think would cause a drop off?
Okay, well, there would be 2 things that would cause a drop off, and one major one would be, in fact, interest rates. Another thing would be qualifying criteria, how difficult or easy it is to qualify for a mortgage. And then the other factor we've been seeing is would be a major surplus of homes. So there'd have to be a major glut of inventory available and not enough buyer demand to support it. So we see some signs of that. We're seeing some signs of inventory, but the good news is in the last couple of weeks we've been seeing buyers keeping up. So buyer demand is keeping up. So it's starting to look like a relatively good spring to summer selling season. At least in my market, I can't speak all over the country, but here in my market, which is Ventura County, primarily, we don't really see those combination of things. We're seeing the market is kind of holding steady after already having a 3 to 5% decline in home prices. So we've been through the shift, and it looks like we're at the end of the shift. And unless the Fed does something unexpected, now they're saying they're not going to raise again all year because they want to stimulate housing and keep prices down. But unless there's some change in policy or change in world affairs, like a war or something, I think that the market's going to be pretty stable. But it could, who knows? No, I'm have no crystal ball.
Yeah, I don't know. There just seems to be so much. I'm really trying to wrap my brain around the numbers not lining up in the fourth quarter. Like, there was such a dramatic drop off where everybody just literally got approved for loan modifications. There's a spike in bankruptcies. The default rate's the same. It's 5%. It's been 5% for quite a few years, plus or minus 0.1%. And then we literally go from a 2.5% default rate somewhere around last summer, now down to 1.5%. So we dropped a full 1% in severely delinquent. And it is a tremendous, like, that's a tremendous drop off in the course of 6 months. It is a tremendous drop off over the course. And I just don't know. And I was thinking about this the other day, David. If you were at a bank, you've had a lot of experience with banks, much like myself, and this is the one I was trying to get Diana to understand. I don't know how you classify a loan mod. It's not a performing loan, and it's not a non-performing loan. And I'm wondering if these things are even documented or they're taken out and not considered on the net balance sheet. I'm sure they're somewhere,
No,
right?
no, they treat a loan, a trial loan modification is in default, and a permanent loan modification is cured
Okay.
until it goes back in default. So that's how the banks are doing. So you cure the default with a loan modification, technically
Okay.
speaking.
So they're considering it
So there's
a
not
full
really
restructuring and rewrite. Okay.
now we know we know that pool of loan mods has a really high default rate. So they might put them in a different category, but but it's like being almost pregnant. You're either in default or you're not.
I agree. I agree. And I wonder how those numbers really jive out. Tina Hambleton, David, can you talk about the new tax implication for short sales in 2019? Are there?
There
Question
are
mark?
no, yeah, there's no new tax implications. The tax implications are exactly the same as they were for this year. There's been no modification. The questions that related to that is that if you do a short sale, you are going to get a 1099, but that event all by itself does not make it taxable. It's really only going to be taxable if the homeowner who's receiving the 1099 has assets that are greater than the loss. If the assets that they have at the time of the short sale are less than the amount of the loss, they would be considered insolvent. And through that insolvency, they fill out the appropriate form, which I don't know the name of it, the number, but you just Google an IRS insolvency form and it'll come up, and they fill that out, and it's not a taxable event.
Same as before, Form 982 of the IRS, Tina. You are
And
correct.
let me asterisk that by saying I am not a CPA, and I'm not
Right.
giving accounting or legal advice.
Please always consult with your attorney, CPA, broker, mom, dad. This is my favorite line from my original webinar. I would do the Form 982, but of course, please consult with your CPA, attorney, mom, dad, whomever. Anybody that you feel is qualified to give you professional advice. Certainly don't take my word for it. Let's see. By the way, hi, everybody. Welcome to your webinar. Lee-honish, David-Bartels. We are just 22 days, 22 hours away from our annual marketing summit. I am very strongly leaning on discussing at the event from a data standpoint. I'm starting to really feel the vibe about going after 30, 60, 90s and finding a new source of data before the banks get involved and basically screw up somebody who's going to default anyway. They're just prolonging this, David, and it's starting to irritate me.
I think there's some merit to tagging 90-day delinquents that are NOD.
Yeah, I do too. And I've just got to find a good data source for it. I think that the minute the bank gets involved to clear up their books and keep their numbers all, so many things wrong with what happened from the market collapse. So many things. We were talking about it before we started. And for the new people, I'm sorry. This is David Bartels, owner of Home Loan Advocates. He is your coach. He answers very smart questions. David, please get out your info, as always.
Okay. Well, David Bartels, Home Loan Advocates, and other related real estate companies. So Home Loan Advocates is basically a distressed property consulting firm where our primary source of income is short sale negotiations, where we figured out how to get the bank to pay us to do those short sale negotiations for you, which means if you're running into a difficult challenge and you need or want somebody to handle the heavy lifting that has to be done with a bank on a short sale transaction, we'd be a great resource for you to consider and get information from. So in those scenarios, there's a 72% chance that the bank will actually pay our fee, and it will cost you nothing to have us do it for you. And if you wanted to chat with me, you could do it at 805-413-8000, 805-413-8000, or email at david@homeloanadvocates.com. That's plural, advocates.com.
There you go. Donald Ross, what percentage of permanent loan mods go back into default? Good question.
Well, I know they, in their net present value calculator, the banks use 40%. So, but that includes trial loan mods, by the way. So I don't know what the permanent loan mod numbers are, but I would say give or take 40%.
There you go. For anybody who wants to make sure that they sign up for the event, prereo.org, 22 days away, 22 hours away. It will be a phenomenal day of discussing how to get listings out of the pre-foreclosure market. Enough said about that. Go ahead and load up your questions. We'll be happy to discuss any and all of those. We had talked about this, I think, last year, David. You were thinking of going into the property management business with this report that just came out on Housing Wire, which is kind of all over in the last couple of days. Are you surprised, having sold off all of our REOs into all the trusts and turning them all into rentals? Are you surprised that the market with the pricing has turned into a rent desirable market? I guess that's the correct word. Are you surprised by it?
No, I mean, the reason that I started thinking about and dabbling in property management was because I wanted to create a lead funnel, basically, of rental properties. Because if you, just like we do on advocate marketing, where you are establishing a trusted relationship with somebody who has a high probability of doing a real estate transaction, not different than an expired or a FSBO or a divorce or a probate. For all those reasons, I wanted to be in the property management business, because at some point in the future, they're going to want to assess the value, and there's a rather high probability that they're going to do additional transactions, or they're, by adding additional rental property, which they're going to seek our advice on and assistance, or they are going to want to liquidate their property and roll it up into a 1031 exchange, which would be another buy-sell transaction. So my goal initially was not really to make a bunch of money doing property management, though that's certainly possible if you can get enough doors. My objective was simply to build trusted relationships with people who had a high probability of doing a transaction or two a year.
Tina Hambleton, I did that in 2007, and it did prove to be a great funnel, but can be painful, David.
Oh, for sure. No, it is painful, and you gotta have staying power, and you're gonna do a lot of work for a little money in the beginning, and it's a very labor intensive business until you get enough doors to support a staff person that can handle it for you. So in the beginning, you've got to do it on your own because there's no money to pay anybody else to do it. But once you get over that hump, then it's much easier.
Go ahead and load up your questions. I'm going to keep playing hypothetical with David about the market, since we are clearly at a turning point in the real estate market. This has to be the summer of make or break. Like, they've either got to figure it out, or the rates have to be, I don't know what it is, but I figure this is the year that it's got to work itself out, or it's going to go in the wrong direction. So I'll keep playing hypothetical till questions pop up, David. Hypothetically, you are the czar of real estate back in 2007. You'll like this one. It's a good one. You were elected czar.
Okay. 2007.
2007, 2008. And
right.
Somebody walks into you and says, all right, we're abolishing this REO thing. The president's going to sign this. It's been lobbied for. We're going to let Wall Street investment firms with this weird, wacky trust start to purchase and hold properties and they're going to get a clear mainline funnel. Would you have kept it in the hands of realtors? You got to remove yourself from being a realtor for this scenario. Would you have kept it in the hands of realtors, or would you have still done what we basically did, which is turn this into a rental economy?
Well, it turned into a rental. I'm going to answer that, I think. Well, first, I was not a realtor in 2007. I had just sold my company Selling Smarter to Doc Magic, and we still didn't recognize what was happening at that point. So it didn't become clear until the beginning of into 2007, 2008 to us, when all of our clients we were servicing the mortgage industry, and all of our clients started going out of business. So having said that, and attendance at our seminars went down dramatically because we were training loan officers. So what happened so the answer is, I don't really know. See, the part that we didn't know was the massive size of it. No, it was
Right.
unprecedented. And so if it was a normal market, and in the beginning, that's what they did. They kind of relied on the individual realtors. And these guys that had these REO relationships with the banks just killed it, right?
Yep.
And everybody else stood outside watching. But what happened? The numbers rolled up so fast, and they couldn't process it out through the individual channels, that they started just packaging them in bulk, just like they did these the mortgages that were collapsing, the secondary market. And they basically created a secondary market for real estate inventory to sell them in bulk, just to push it through the system. And that was aided by federal money. So it was the bailout money that allowed them to write that inventory down and then package it and resell it, so that they can tear it out. Otherwise, it would have been a slow, arduous process. The
Right.
thing that surprised me and you and probably lots of other people is that we kept thinking, because we kept hearing that there's going to be a lot of inventory coming on the market. The banks are going to release inventory. They're holding all this inventory, and it never showed up. It still hasn't shown up.
It still hasn't showed up.
But the only difference is we stopped talking about it because these hedge funds started buying. But on the other hand, you can thank the hedge funds, because they, in Southern California at least, they really they're the ones that started this 2011, 2012 surge in home values, when, again, to our surprise, these guys were out accumulating money or accumulating houses at retail or above. They were just outbidding everybody for what was traditionally a distressed property that was sold at a discount to market. These guys were coming out and paying retail to get these houses, with what we thought was a strategy to hold for 3 to 5 years and then resell. And that hasn't happened either. So they turned it into rental market. And that's why the California Association of Realtors is saying that by 2025, not that long, California will be 50% rental. We'll have more rentals than or non-owner occupied is what they call it. And that was really that news a couple of years ago is what really is forcing me to face the demons of doing property management, even though I really don't have time to mess around with it. And I'm just gonna have to pay somebody $40,000 a year to do it for me, I think, just so I can get there, because it's got a long-term play, from my perspective. But yeah, so if I were to do it, I would.
You would have let the market crash harder?
No, I don't. It was scary. I mean, it was scary. I don't know if I would have let the market crash harder. I'm not smart enough to know what to do. But I think that at the end of the day, there was a decision across the board, some deal making that was made to push this stuff through the system faster, so we can get to the recovery. And even that took 3 to 5 years. And if you had not done that, I think that that it would have stagnated, and we would just be beginning our ascent that we started in 2011, when it became a very strong seller's market because there was no inventory. And now we're just now seeing inventory. And what you said earlier, I think, is right, that that last year we never saw the spring summer selling season. It never materialized. And the question I'm having now, and what we're waiting to see, are the buyers going to show up this year? There's going to be inventory. The question is whether or not there's going to be buyers. And if buyers don't come in to suck up all the inventory, then you're going to see the market decline further, maybe another 3 to 5%. But it's not going to crash. It's just going to slide.
No, and And for those of you wondering if there's an abrupt, I don't think there's an abrupt crash, but we know this because I've done it for this long, and David is a trend follower. The market is going to depreciate. It's an inevitable fact of the real estate market. It's an inevitable fact of the stock market. It's the inevitable fact of the dollar. It appreciates and it depreciates. It's just the ebb and flow. And no president, nobody in power wants to be on the back end of a slide of one of the three major markets, right? So you do everything you can to keep everything floating above the board. You don't want to be the person in power when it goes the opposite direction. And my greatest fear is what will be done to keep stimulating the market and keeping it at a balloon rate instead of allowing the basic ebb and flow of the dollar to occur, right? The appreciation and depreciation of the dollar. And, nobody wants a recession. I get that. I don't know how we suddenly, over the last couple of years, materialized all these jobs and made all these reports look so amazing. I think it's great. I think we just stopped counting people personally. But who am I to, David and I have had this debate for as long as we've known each other. You've had relationships with people who are actually in political power who've run numbers by me and they go, "What do you think?" I said, "It's a great report. It makes it look very good for the people at the top, but the numbers are crafted. The numbers are always crafted to maintain the status quo and make people in power either look bad or look good, depending on the media and the source. Media is such a strong influencer in today's market, David. I believe that's one of the reasons why people just aren't moving up or moving down or making real estate plays the way they used to. And I think it's strictly because of the amount of media you have to deal with on a daily basis if you're a homeowner, a buyer, seller, or even a real estate agent.
Well, I think that it's a weird. I think the bottom line is it's a weird market and nobody really knows what's going to happen. But I would not make a big bet one way or another because we just don't know. We just don't know what the buyers are going to do. We know sellers want to sell. I mean, you've got to look. If you look at, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but if you look at 2018 numbers, there was a 25%, 25% of houses came off the market unsold, that expired, withdrawn, or canceled, presumably because they couldn't find a buyer that was willing to pay their price expectations. And we saw days on market soar for that reason as well. And then what we've just seen recently, at the end of 2018, we saw hundreds of listings coming off the market. And again, I'm assuming they're coming back on the market because these sellers with unrealistic expectations are saying, well, it must be the season's fault. It's certainly not my house. It's certainly not my opinion. So let's try it again in April and see if we get, better results. And they might get better results if there's more demand. But right now, we still aren't seeing the buyer demand, though we have seen buyer activity increase dramatically. And the other observation is that new listings are selling right away. New listings are coming in using the reduced comps of the new sales that have taken place, not the high expectations that older long days on market sellers have had. And the sellers who are coming on the market and pricing at market comps are selling their houses pretty quickly. And the listings that have been on the market 90, 120 days and refuse to adjust their comps or adjust their price to what current comps are sitting on the market, and we're just waiting for that inventory to clear out. And hopefully when it does come back on the market, it comes back at a market value price based on actual comps and not hopes and dreams.
There you go. John Sloan, are buyers waiting to see what's going to happen with the new tax laws and how it's going to affect them? I think the new form just came out. I'm going to give you a caveat to answer that because I would like your feedback on it, David. I will add this. So for those of you who don't know, my brother-in-law is an investor before he went off to Fire Academy, which is where he's happily now. So basically the bulk of the money he made this year was all cash, 1099. his living girlfriend, who pays into the system with normal deductions, their payback at the end of the year, she owed $200, he owed $100, if you can wrap your brain around that, after they did their deductions. However, when they declared themselves common law married, she got $4,100 back. The new tax laws are going to be very interesting, David. I don't know how much of that is actual, and I'm getting it third hand through the channel. But even if it's just he only had to pay $100 after making cash all year, and she had to pay $200 even though she was paying in to pay taxes, there are going to be some people very unhappy when tax returns, or people who were planning to buy based on tax returns, if this is actual, that could have a huge impact.
Well, okay, so there's nothing changed about tax returns other than what people thought they were getting, and what they're getting may not necessarily be the same. I think that was part of the holdup. Now, I happen to be meeting with my CPA today to talk about this very subject, in fact, because I'm very afraid that I'm going to owe a whole bunch of money, and I just sold my house, and I've got what I'm afraid might be a big capital gain, and I'm trying to figure out how to avoid that. And if I can't avoid it, it's only going to come as a result of buying something else and something more expensive. So, having said that, the new tax plan is definitely having an effect, especially for these high price markets like California. They're having an effect because you can, first of all, you can only deduct up to $10,000 in property taxes, and you're only deducting mortgage up to $750,000. So that is having an effect. Now, whether or not it's a deterrent is another thing. We don't really know. I'm sure it is for some people, but not for others. Now, the thing to I think the thing to watch is what you're saying is people are reporting their refunds are 8-9% lower than last year. IRS is reporting that. I read that yesterday or day before. I think it was 8.7% lower than at this time last year. And then the White House is responding by saying that's because they were taking more money home during the year. And so I don't know whether or not that's true or it's propaganda or not. But what you said is true, is that some people are waiting for their tax returns, and that's when the spring selling season really starts in earnest, and is April 15th. And a lot of that has to do with people want to know where they stand, and they want to know, are they paying money, are they getting money back? And if people are getting 8% less money, that probably doesn't have an impact on buyers. But if it turns out they're having to pay more money because they underestimated or under withheld their taxes, then that's certainly going to impact people's ability or desire to be able to buy a new home.
David Hero, sellers are losing equity, so they are trying to sell themselves. Well, that explains also the online companies coming on. Many sellers want to downsize, but the cost of selling buying is too expensive. How much is the iMarket / sell it yourself? You're in a model that is just slightly outside with the flat fee help you sell service. How much does it really impact the day-to-day market for traditional Keller Williams type agents?
Well, it affects it so much that the Keller Williams of the world and the Century 21s of the world, their corporate offices have secured venture money to go out and be an iBuyer themselves. And what we're seeing is that one of the techniques that these big franchises are doing, and I'm actually exploring it myself, is that when you sit down to do a listing presentation, you're saying, hey, we can list it and go through these, but if you don't want to hassle that, then we can get you a guaranteed price of B. What do you want to do? And they're just presenting it to them both ways. Now, we're not seeing a lot of iBuyer activity here in our market. We are seeing them pop up. We see the press releases and we see the news flashes on them, and and every time they raise a little more money, we see that. So we are seeing that part. We are seeing. But when I talk to some of my affiliates in, say, Phoenix area, they told me that they were doing some research and that research is showing that, I can't remember what he said, but over 1,000 listings by Opendoor alone. So over 1,000 listings by Opendoor alone, which means Opendoor went in there, paid 92%, I think, of market value, then charged a 8 to 12% administrative fee, which reduced it another. So they're let's call it, 80, 85% of market value. They're selling it, and buyers are just doing it because of the certainty and the hassle-free experience, and they're getting there, and they're able to close within 3 days. And so they're doing, and then they're going around and doing light rehab on these properties and putting them back on the market with a for sale sign through their network. So it is going to have an impact. How much of an impact, I don't know, but this is this thing that I've always said when we talk about that in advocate marketing. Step one is to secure the property, and the best way to do that is with a listing. And then step two is to figure out how you're going to get compensated. Are you going to be the buyer and you're going to fix it and flip it? You're going to buy it and hold it? Or are you going to just broker it as a listing agent? And what these guys are doing is taking that one step further, is that when you sit down and meet with homeowners, distressed or otherwise, you show it to them both ways and let them decide. Or you, and what, excuse me, what some of these people are probably doing. Oh, sorry, Lee.
Are you okay?
Yeah. What some of these people are probably are doing is that they're going in there, they're going to list full service, and then if they don't get the results that they want, then they're going to, you're going to see these companies start offering guaranteed sales. So it's an old Craig Proctor trick where they, we'll sell your house in 30 days or we'll buy it.
Right.
So you're going to see that is going to start happening as well as, and this is what I would love to do. I'd love to have an iBuyer program in place, and I'm actually trying to work on that, where I can go in and give them a guaranteed sale price, where we'll do it your way. And if the market doesn't respond with an offer where you think it ought to be within 30 days, then we'll buy it for X number of dollars, and you can close as soon as you want to.
It's an RPO. It's a RPO. It's a run pass option.
Right. And if you think about the model is very similar to what relocation services are doing. Where they say, we want you to list your house, and you list it for 60 days. And if it doesn't sold, then we're going to give you, then you have the option to get a guaranteed buyout at, 95% of face value. It's the same concept.
Richard Galloway, the hedge funds aren't run by stupid people. I agree. They were paying retail and above for houses to solve a problem. They had too much investment money, wanting higher returns at the same time that their usual special opportunity investments weren't available in large enough numbers, so they went into ownership and rental business. I agree.
So think about this. I mean, what he's saying is exactly right. They had no choice but to overpay for these houses. So right. You think about it, if they're borrowing imagine you're a person who took $500,000 of somebody's money in exchange for 4% a year. You're paying that 4% a year. I don't even know what the math is on that. You're paying that 4% a year or 5% a year on that money, regardless of whether or not you use it or not. So it's a lot less expensive to go out there and use it, and then and figure out how you can just make 5%, or even if you're paying 4% and you can only get a return of 2%, now you're only going backwards 2%, and that's only temporarily versus 4%. So, but the reality, these guys were figuring out how to buy, hold, and get renters in there to at least cover the cost of servicing. And then they had the benefit of depreciation and appreciation and the tax write-offs that came with initial loss, why they waited for the market to catch up. And then cumulatively, these guys pushed the market up almost 30% over the next 2 years.
Yeah,
that's what happened. So they made a short-term bet, and they won because they were all making the same bet, and they forced the market up.
And this is why I see easing in prices over the next couple of years, because property like gold or anything else, David, even if you bought it at the top of the market, you're going to hold it for as long as you can while it works until there's such a drop off that it makes sense, or you see an easing in the prices where you know it's time to sell, wait it out, the market's making its run. When it gets back to the bottom, start buying it up again and doing the same cycle all over. I mean, that's the basics of investing, right? Buy high, sell, buy low, sell high, and wait for the cycle to happen. And we've had this debate with Darren, which at the time he kept saying, no, it wouldn't have any effect on the market. At this point in the market, if we had hedge funds from your perspective and they started to put more property back into the market, that it just started to show up, right? It would have a huge impact. You'd look at a 3 to 5%.
The opposite way.
Yeah, right.
The opposite way.
And
I mean,
it would
if these guys started all of a sudden, they said, okay, we're ready to cash out, and they started putting that stuff on the market in the quantities that they sucked it out of the market, you would have, where the market grew 30%, you would have the opposite effect. I'm not sure it would push the market down 30%, but it would certainly push the market down.
Yeah. Which
because
would
they
probably
have to start competing. They would start competing with other sellers to reduce the price, and so they know that they can shift it. Their momentum changes the dynamics of the market, but as long as the renter demand is so good and rents are rising faster than houses are rising, which is what's happening, they've got no reason to do that.
Not at the moment. I wonder, and that's again, we're back to the same point. What has to happen in the spring and summer where the tipping point happens, or everybody projected appreciation this year. I don't think that there was a single soul who didn't say that the real estate market wasn't going to continue to appreciate anywhere from the lowest number I ever saw was 0.5% or 1% up to 3 to 5% again this year. I don't think that's true. I think they'd be really happy if they hit a plateau at this point.
All right, so this is where this broad data is really misleading the people. Okay, right. So if you look at an individual market, say if you look at my market, it will tell you that our market is up 5 or 6% year over year. And then when you break it down into segments, so I track our market and a segment from 2 to 600,000. 600 to 1 million, and 1 million to 2 million. That's where 98% of our transactions take place, in the 200,000 to 2 million. So I just trifurcate it, right? And so when you look at that, you see the over $1 million book of business year over year is down almost 1% in appreciation. So it's a 1% depreciation. You see the 600 million or 600,000 to 1 million is down a fraction of 1% year over year in terms of actual sale price and actual list price. And then you see the $200,000 to $600,000 market is up almost 3%. So that's what's weird about it. And then you look at average sale price. So if you know it's only up almost 3% in one market, in one segment, and the other two segments are down, how do you have an overall market appreciation of 5 or 6%? And the answer is averages lie, because if you look at because the averages are based on all the, throw them all into a pot and divide them. So if you take a closer look at the microeconomics of it, over 50% of the transactions that are taking place are under the $600,000 market, and we are seeing an increase in the number of $600,000 to $2 million transactions, while we're seeing a decrease in the number of $0 to $600,000 transactions. So overall, with those numbers are skewing the averages. So when you hear a report saying the market is up year over year, that doesn't mean your house is worth 5% more than it was last year. That's just the overall market dynamics of the market, and it's not an accurate reflection of reality. So, you know, what I just said might be hard to understand, but if you have, if you have 100 less $0 to $600,000 transactions and 100 more $1 million transactions plus, your average is going up,
right?
Even though that segment isn't appreciating.
And that's the way it always works. It doesn't matter what data you're using to prove whatever point. I was doing a radio show for Fred Solomon, and they asked me to pull data for the Coachella Valley. I said, well, are you really asking about Palm Springs, which has no bearing on time and space? There's 12 people who've missed payments, and there are 12 active like the number. I said, or are you talking about Cathedral City, where you jump to one in every 1,000 houses instead of one in every 3,000 houses? And prices and sales between the two cities are completely varied. But if I'm writing a report for the Coachella Valley, I have to take all that data in and come up with finalized, averaged out numbers. And that's where we get into these weird projective things that don't, I guess they make sense to me. To me, it just, again, it goes down to how refined can you make your niche when you're pulling your data and understanding the numbers and trying to fish where they ain't at the end of the day, giving yourself the best chance. I just spent taking it all the way back to marketing, David. I just spent a great deal of time trying to understand the 2019 algorithms on YouTube. And at the end of the day, this is what all of them said. Look at the top 5 things that people are using for keywords. See this keyword down here at the bottom of the page? You have to remember there's still, a billion people using YouTube. So the 10th thing on the list is still a high search probability, which is what you should be focusing on instead of a keyword like real estate agent in Los Angeles. Instead, the 10th down is real estate agent in Los Angeles who specializes in XYZ. It doesn't change with data. It really does come down to how refined can I make my niche so that I have the possibility to generate a lead source. And for those of you wondering what bearing does all this have, you need to know your markets. I mean, you need to know what cities are performing or underperforming, where you're going to get the highest and best chance to find deals. David and I have experimented throughout Southern California, and everywhere gets a different result. I mean, literally, when you're talking about people who've missed payments. And so it is definitely something to look at long term. David, give out your info for everybody.
Well, you can call me 805-413-8000 or email me at david@homeloanadvocates.com.
Make sure to register at prereo.org for the event on March 15th in Pasadena, California. We're doing okay. I haven't really pushed it hard yet because I think we're up to around 100 people registered, I think, David, so far, plus or minus.
Awesome.
I haven't looked at it recently. I haven't really pushed it that hard yet. There hasn't been any marketing on it. So everybody sign up. For those of you that are out of state, yes, it will be streamed for the coaching students. It won't be a general. Usually I record it and probably do a highlights reel and send that out as general after the event. But for all of you that are coaching students, we will have a complete stream available. prereo.org.